Everyone at Ridgeline General called her Nurse Cole. Quiet, punctual, forgettable. Nobody knew her real name. Nobody knew that for 11 years she had answered to a different one, spoken only in briefing rooms, stitched onto a uniform she hadn't worn in 3 years. She kept her head down. She kept her hands steady. She kept her past buried under scrub-green fabric and a badge that said Emily Cole, RN. Then, on a Tuesday morning that started like every other, a gurney burst through the ER doors, and a name was shouted across the room that hit her like a detonation. Everything after that would change. Before we get there, welcome to Silent Heroes. If you're watching this from your car, your kitchen, or your break room right now, drop it in the comments. And hit subscribe because you do not want to miss where this one goes. Now back to Emily. Ridgeline General sat on the edge of a mid-sized city, the kind of hospital that smelled like burnt coffee and antiseptic in equal measure. Emily Cole had worked the trauma floor for 3 years. She wore her dark hair pulled back tight, always in the same low bun. A thin white scar ran along her left forearm, the kind she never explained and nobody asked about twice. Her hands never shook. Not once. Not even when a patient coded in front of her. She had learned, a long time ago, that the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Not invisible, small. Small enough that people looked past her instead of through her. She spoke only when necessary. She answered questions with fewer words than the question contained. She let people assume she was ordinary because ordinary was safe. For 11 years, she had been someone else entirely. Dr. Marcus Reyes ran the trauma floor like it was his personal stage. He had the kind of confidence that came from never once being told he was wrong, mostly because he made sure nobody around him felt safe enough to say it. He had a habit, a favorite one, of humiliating nurses in front of patients. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Cole. I asked for compliance." He said it often. He said it like it cost him nothing. It cost her everything to stay quiet. She did it anyway. Only one person at Ridgeline ever looked at her like she was more than what she pretended to be. Old Mr. Hensley, a retired trucker with a bad heart and a habit of overstaying his checkups just to talk to her, used to squint at her across the room and say, "You've seen things, haven't you, Cole? I can tell. You carry yourself like somebody who's been shot at." She never answered him. He never stopped asking. That morning, the ambulance bay doors slammed open at 6:47 a.m. Multiple trauma. GSW to the chest. Possible pneumothorax. The gurney came through fast, wheels screaming against tile, a paramedic shouting vitals nobody could keep up with. Reyes stepped in immediately, chest out, voice booming orders that sounded confident and were, in fact, catastrophically wrong. Chest tube, second intercostal space, midclavicular line, now. Emily's stomach dropped. Wrong site. Wrong approach. A rookie mistake dressed up as authority. She saw it before anyone else did. The trachea shifted, barely, toward the uninjured side. Jugular veins distended. Blood pressure falling too fast for a simple pneumothorax. This wasn't simple. This was tension pneumothorax, and if Reyes opened that chest where he intended, he would miss it. The man on the table had minutes, not hours. Her hands stopped trembling. They always did, at moments like this. She stepped forward. Fifth intercostal, anterior axillary line. Now. Before you lose him. Reyes turned, face flushing red. "Excuse me." The room went still. "Tension pneumothorax," she said, voice flat and certain, the fog of Nurse Cole burning off her like morning mist. "Trachea's deviated. JVD's present. He needs decompression now, not where you're pointing. I did not ask for your diagnosis. You're about to kill him." Silence dropped over the trauma bay like a held breath. Reyes's jaw tightened. "Step back." She didn't. Instead, she reached for the 14-gauge needle herself, her spine straightening, her voice dropping into something clipped and commanding that none of them had ever heard from her before. "Someone hold pressure. I need betadine. Now." A tension pneumothorax happens when air becomes trapped in the chest cavity with no way to escape, building pressure that collapses the lung and pushes against the heart itself. Left untreated, it kills within minutes. The heart simply runs out of room to beat. The fix is brutal and immediate. A needle inserted at the correct site to release the trapped air before the heart stops. She found the space. She inserted the needle. A hiss of air escaped, and the monitor's alarm, screaming seconds before, began to steady. "Sats climbing," a tech said, stunned. "BP's coming back up." Reyes stood frozen, needle still in his own hand, useless. The patient's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Emily, really looked, and his lips moved, dry and cracked. "Major," he whispered. The word hit the room like a detonation. Nobody moved. "What did you call her?" Reyes said, voice shaking now for an entirely different reason. The patient's eyes stayed locked on hers. "Major Cole. 3rd Combat Support. You pulled me out of Kandahar." Emily said nothing. She only looked back at him, steady, the mask she'd worn for 11 years cracking wide open in front of a room full of strangers. Reyes found his voice first, sharp with panic dressed as authority. "I don't know what this man is talking about, but you are out of line, Cole. Way out of line." She met his eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't look away. "No," she said. "I am just done hiding." Reyes's face went through 3 colors in 5 seconds, pale, red, and finally a blotchy, furious white. He needed control back, and he needed it fast. "You're suspended," he said, loud enough for the whole bay to hear. "Effective immediately. I want security to escort her out." Nobody moved to obey him. The tech who'd called out the vitals just stared. A second nurse, hands still gloved, didn't so much as glance toward the door. Even the paramedic who'd wheeled the gurney and stood rooted in place, watching Emily instead of Reyes. "You can suspend me," Emily said, voice even, after he's stable. "Not before." She turned back to the patient. "Pressure dressing. Oxygen." A second line started, fast and clean, her hands moving like they'd never stopped moving this way, like Nurse Cole had been the costume all along, and this was the woman underneath it. Reyes reached for her arm. "I said. Don't," she said, without even looking at him. Something in the single word made him step back. By 7:15 that morning, a small crowd had gathered at the edge of the trauma bay, off-duty staff, a janitor, 2 residents who should have been elsewhere. Word moves fast in a hospital. So does judgment. And the room's judgment, watching Reyes stammer through explanations nobody had asked for, had already begun to turn against him. Mr. Hensley, there for a routine follow-up, stood at the doorway with his arms crossed and a look on his face that wasn't quite a smile. "Told you," he muttered. "Didn't I tell you?" By 9 a.m., 2 men in service uniforms walked through the front doors of Ridgeline General asking for someone named Major Emily Cole. Reyes intercepted them in the hallway, already rebuilding his composure. "There's no one here by that name. This is a civilian hospital." The older of the 2 men, a colonel with silver at his temples and the calm patience of someone used to being obeyed, looked past Reyes entirely. "We were informed she works here. Under a different name." Emily stepped out from behind the nurse's station. "Colonel Ashford," she said quietly. He studied her for a long moment, the scrubs, the tired eyes, the version of her that had spent 3 years trying to disappear. Then he addressed the hallway, voice carrying easily over the murmurs. "Major Emily Cole. Combat medic, 3rd Combat Support Hospital. Bronze Star with Valor. 2 combat tours. Credited with 14 confirmed field saves under direct fire, including the evacuation you all just watched her perform a version of, 5 minutes ago, without a weapon in sight." The hallway went dead silent. Reyes opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "She didn't disappear," Ashford continued. "She chose to. After what happened to her unit, she asked to be left alone. We respected that. Until this morning, when a patient's family called this office directly, asking why the doctor who almost killed their father was still holding a scalpel. Reyes's composure cracked entirely. "This is absurd. I followed protocol. She interfered with my patient. She's not even. She's a decorated field officer who diagnosed a fatal condition you missed," Ashford said, in front of a dozen witnesses. "I'd choose my next sentence carefully, Doctor." Reyes said nothing else. He didn't have anything left to say. It didn't take long after that for the rest to come apart. An internal review, triggered by 3 separate nurses coming forward, uncovered what Reyes had been hiding under the noise of his own arrogance. A falsified equipment log, tied to a supply contract that paid him a quiet monthly bonus for underreporting faulty chest tube kit. Cheaper units, bigger margins. A man who valued his own comfort over the people on his table. The danger wasn't over. A week later, a man connected to the supply company confronted Emily in the hospital parking garage, demanding she stay quiet, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. The old fear tried to rise in her chest, the memory of another grip, another dark stairwell, the comrade she hadn't been fast enough to save in Kandahar. She didn't freeze this time. "Let go," she said. He didn't. So she made him. Security arrived to find him on the ground, disarmed, and Emily standing over him, steady, breathing hard but not shaking. "He has a chance," she murmured to herself, thinking of the patient from that morning. Not about the man on the ground. About the one she'd saved. Reyes lost his license within the month. The hospital board renamed the trauma intake protocol after the incident. The Cole Protocol, mandatory pneumothorax screening before any chest procedure. Emily wasn't suspended. She was promoted. Given her own title. Director of Combat Trauma Readiness, a program built to train civilian ER staff using real battlefield triage. Her old self and her new one, finally standing in the same room instead of hiding from each other. Mr. Hensley was there the day the new sign went up outside her office. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded once, like it was already understood. She never had to hide again. Some people carry their strength quietly, not because they're weak, but because the world hasn't earned the right to see it yet. The bravest thing Emily ever did wasn't on a battlefield. It was standing still, in a hallway full of strangers, and finally telling the truth. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe to Silent Heroes so you never miss the next one. Comment below, what would you have done in that hallway? The next story is already waiting. The end.